both administrations, both Trump and Biden, contributed to the inflation that we saw. But look, that's on the past, and we've got so much happening right now that's worth thinking about. David Rubenstein was talking about tariffs in the 1930s and said that was a complete disaster. Well, I was on this show pre-election, and I came up with the acronym MADGA, which is Make American Depressions Great Again. And I'm a little worried that I'm not calling for a depression by any means, but I'm just worried about the possibility for trade wars. And the implications would be, I think, dire, not just for the U.S., but globally. We've seen just the back and forth of how tariffs that were implemented here against Canada and Mexico quickly escalated into potentially Canada even shutting off electricity to certain parts of the United States. I think the thing that's not being contemplated when these tariffs are thought about, and it's certainly not being evaluated, I think, thoroughly in terms of the ultimate impact, is what the retaliation is, what kind of wars happen, and then all of the knock-on effects. So my impression and my belief is that if we see tariffs happen on April 2nd, it's called Liberation Day by Trump. I think we'll be liberated from our wealth potentially on that day. But I think that the impact is way beyond what most people are considering right now.
Right. And so how do you see the second order, third order effects ultimately? And also to the big question on what the Fed does next in lieu of the fiscal policy path that we are seeing the Trump administration adopt. What is your thinking there?
Well, a couple of months ago, I was worried about the inflation effects on tariffs. But as you see some of the things happening here with the consumer confidence data that you just talked about, it was pretty dire. So I think I would start to lean towards being more worried about recession than long-term effects on inflation, although certainly there's going to be an immediate impact on the inflation numbers here in the U.S. once we see additional tariffs come into place. But, what you start to see with the uncertainty that's presented, and the uncertainty is extreme, let's all stop pretending that this is all well planned. Within 1 day, we see back and forth where tariffs are escalating. So there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty coming into the economy. And I think that potentially going to play out with a downturn. I'm not going to say definitively recession yet, but I think it's definitely going to have more of a negative impact on GDP, both U.S. and globally, than people expect.
Well, certainly whether or not the consumer confidence is low doesn't necessarily mean that people won't stop spending. I've learned to never underestimate the power and motivation of a US consumer. But nonetheless, it does show that there is somewhat of a paralysis going on across all parts of the economy. Just ask any small business owner, are you feeling paralyzed in your ability to hire more people or to make investment outlays? Because, of course, no one knows exactly what the impact of these tariffs is going to be. What are you seeing in terms of investor behavior, which is very much the corner piece of your new book?
Thank you for that, because what's interesting is that we're always looking, I think, in this marketplace for signs in the economy or signs in labor that suggest that things are going to turn bad, and as a consequence, the markets and stocks may fall. In fact, over the last two major declines in the global stock market happened where labor was strong and GDP was strong, and the stock market fell first. So I think that's what I think we need to watch out for. Let's look and see what happens as a result in April 2nd. We saw a downturn, and we entered into correction in the U.S. briefly in the last couple of weeks, and we've rallied a bit off of that. But that could be the moment of just peak optimism where we see potentially stocks turning down again. So I worry about stocks losing faith and investors losing faith and the market turning south again, moving beyond just a correction level. And that then potentially helps create a decrease in consumer spending that you're talking about, which, of course, you need to see to be looking at or talking about recessions.